Hey, it is Non here, and I've been censored once again. I don't know if this is something that's unique to me or if it's happening to many people, but now I am unable to comment on YouTube, and if I try to comment, it freezes my whole phone. Just clicking on comment, ever since the last YouTube, or 2 updates ago. I was hoping the last update would fix the error, but it's still the same, where my ability to comment has been removed. And that's kind of where I would express myself, I guess, and watching lots of YouTube videos and being able to communicate back. So it's a two-way thing. Even if the creator doesn't read the comments, there's other people who read the comments that read other people's comments, and it's nice to have that aspect of media where you're not just receiving programming, but you can communicate. So naturally, as a response to being silenced, I have an intent to communicate. So where I want to go from here, well, this channel, OG Foundation, is really primarily focused on my Allodium here, which is the physical property that I have created and established, and the projects that are going on, and also the animals that are here and other kinds of things. And in the past, I've also put content up about kind of vlogs, so some more ideology type stuff. But what I'm going to do now is create a second channel that's specifically focused on ideology related to Allodium. And in this sense of Allodium, I mean the sovereign state, the nation, the country that OG Foundation, my Allodium, was staked to. So using Allodium as a noun and as a proper noun. My Allodium is a noun, and then it's staked to the proper noun of Allodium. But Allodium is an idea, and so the first video on the new channel, and this channel is at OG Foundation, the other channel is at Allodium. I was able to get that user handle, and so I'm going to make the first video on the Allodium channel, and I'll link it in this video when I post it. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and the chaos in the world can be reflected within us as individuals, conflict within, and whether one is the cause or effect is a conscious choice. So in order to resolve the chaos externally, the solution is to resolve the chaos and the conflict internally. And communication can be essential for that. People can do that on their own. They can resolve their own entanglements, but sometimes it is more effective insofar as staying in relation with other people while being not in conflict. That can require communication. And I believe that communication is one of my strong suits, and I believe that conflict resolution is one of my strong suits. However, marketing is not. So I have faith that the message only reaches those who are ready to receive it. There's a certain sadness that is inherent within me currently, I suppose, related to detaching from other relativities who found themselves conflicted in some ways in relation to me. And while I do my best to reach out in communication so that can be resolved on both ends, it's up to the other parties to accept that, and lacking that communication between parties, the inevitable result is I'm going to resolve the conflict on my end, and that's going to result in disentangling from what were previously relations. They become no longer relations. They're just other people in the world that are separate, with no bond uniting. But what I really want to talk about I don't know where to begin to paint a picture of the culture as it is and what it's come from, the human culture, and the fruits of our existence, our collective existence, and over time creating such destructive capability and the abuse that we impose upon each other, and always seemingly the most dominant and least compassionate and the most ready to wage war and steal and oppress. It seems over time that those with those traits continue to advance in their capacity for oppression, their capacity for cruelty and extortion, and ultimately parasitic behavior. And so the host is heavily infested with parasites, and parasites isn't even a fitting word, because the even a parasite is a natural organism. But at this point, what people become infected with is not natural organisms that mirror the effects of parasites, and yet coming from non-natural beings. So it's literally the anti-life, that which is not alive, technological dominance in a sense, that is infecting the host. And as I said, the only way to find health, to resolve the conflict, is within oneself. And yet that doesn't heal the wider world. It only heals and resolves the conflicts within one's sphere of influence, essentially. And there's a saying that if you want to go fast, you go alone, and if you want to go far, you go together. So Han Solo in Star Wars and his trusted companion Chewbacca, they demonstrate the capacity to go fast. They are the fastest of all in the known universe, faster than even anyone else can conceive of the speed by which everyone else will acknowledge you two are the fastest in your Millennium Falcon. But they can't even conceptualize the speed by which they have traveled. So they'll say, yes, you're the fastest, and this is how fast you went, this is the time it took. But everything's relative. So relative to Han and Chewie, they were faster than that. But how can one relate? And how is one to trust one whom they can't relate to? One whom has already set the bar, exceeded the known limits, and achieved the necessary results of freedom, liberation from oppression. There are those who seek to eternally freeze in carbon Han Solo, and to destroy Chewbacca and enslave him. And for a time they succeed. Why do they succeed? Because Han Solo decided to go far and not just fast. He saw the inherent promise in a beautiful woman. And for that reason, falls into the trap set by the empirical forces, the betrayal of his only friend, one of his only friends. And Luke Skywalker, this promising yet ultimately immature young blowhard, finds himself at odds with Han Solo, whom was responsible for rescuing him, because the young Luke lacks the capability for respect. He lacks any capacity for just really life experience to appreciate Han Solo, to appreciate what he represents. This is not true of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan only has pure respect for Han Solo. He understands that he is at the whim of Han Solo, that his plight would be for naught if not for Han Solo. And interestingly, Leia, daughter of the Empire, yet rebellious, also lacks respect for Han Solo and sees him almost as she becomes an antagonist of him. Because the story, as it's presented to us, has Luke as the protagonist. But this is an illusion, because the story actually starts with Leia as the protagonist. And Leia sends the hope through a machine, through R2-D2, a plea for assistance. From one of the last remaining Jedi. The Jedi being the warrior priests who kept order in the universe, and yet through the infiltration of their organization and its corruption, it becomes the source of the downfall of that order and the seed of the oppression that is the Empire. The Empire which would destroy entire nations, entire peoples, rather than let them be free, because their intent is to impress the all, and therefore any rebel must be annihilated. So Leia represents these rebels, and yet she is entirely powerless to resist them. And her message reaches Obi-Wan, and he is also entirely powerless to resist them until they find Han Solo. And it's Han Solo and Chewie in union with the Millennium Falcon, the Trinity, that provides the way by which liberation from the Empire can be attained. But I'm just running with a narrative. I haven't preconceived this. It's just a way of communicating to reach. It's like magic. There's one who may appreciate the reference, but it's unclear if such appreciation will be realized. It's magic in the sense that it's unknown what I will say and how it will achieve its ends. It's a mystery. The words that come out of my mouth and how they apply to the resolution of a conflict that cannot fully be explained. Yet we have symbols and we have stories by which can help us to communicate, even if the entire context cannot be conveyed. The variables cannot be understood by each relativity. Yet still we can find resolution. So as the methods of communication become constricted, the capability to comment is taken away. It does not mean that the potential for salvation is removed. It just means that the options of going far with many are limited. Yet still, may the few go fast and achieve the ends necessary. You see, Luke is the downfall of Han Solo. And then Luke redeems himself. Of course, by going into... So Jabba the Hutt was incapable of tracking down Han Solo, catching up to him, and imprisoning him. However, the Empire was capable. Yet Han Solo was wise in who he chose as his enemies, who he stole from. And so the Empire wasn't out to get him. Jabba the Hutt was. But not the Empire. Not until he chose to assist Luke and Obi-Wan Kenobi. So ultimately, I don't know what I'm saying. Ultimately, I don't know what I'm saying. It's as if I'm getting somewhere, but I think that's about it. Sometimes in conversation, when the intent is set upon a higher ideal, the vessel through which the way may be realized can be unknowing of, as I said, many of the conditions of the track before one. And yet it's realized the hyperdrive is a relative concept in relation where one must see a way from the start to the finish, unknowing what may lie in between. Many variables, many obstacles may potentially lie in between. Just as I'd make a wave-particle duality relation, but tangents can only be so beneficial by way of communication. And the audience is several, not many, but several. The message is meant for several, who are all reflected in the communication present. immediately at hand. So if you're listening to this, you are one of those several. So, having reached at least 3 waypoints along this interstellar journey, the next 2 waypoints are Allodium and Bitcoin Cash, both of which represent a degree of liberation from the empire. What was necessary for Luke in order to transform from a self-serving, ignorant narcissist that screwed everything up because he wanted everything to be about him? What is it that transforms him from that into Yoda, of course? The answer is Yoda. Obi-Wan tries to train him to no avail. And Yoda tries to train him, and still largely to no avail because he doesn't finish his training. And yet one could say that it is the responsibility of the student to recognize what teachings are essential for their development, and when the teaching is enough to reach the next stage in their journey. So while his training with Yoda was not complete, he couldn't even raise an X-Wing out of a swamp. Still, Yoda was wise enough to recognize that his time to depart had come, and he could impart no more lessons. And so Yoda lifted the X-Wing for him, that Luke could continue his journey to then rescue Han Solo, which he did have enough training by that point to achieve that, and rescue Leia as well, who also was imprisoned due to the self-serving failures of Luke. That part I don't understand, so I'm saying things I don't even understand why. So why is it that Luke's self-serving failures lead to the imprisonment of Han Solo and Leia when they go to the Cloud City and are ambushed essentially by the Empire's forces? I don't know the answer to that. I suppose I'll leave that answer as an open question, and I suppose I'll look into it later. And how this relates to Allodium and Bitcoin Cash. So Bitcoin Cash is an economic example of liberation from this empire, which at its core is an empire of debt slavery. The foundation of it is economic, and the politics are the extension of that economic domination. So Allodium has an economic aspect of it, but the way by which the economy can be facilitated, the backbone of that, Allodium has its own protocol for how the currency is created, but ultimately it's the Bitcoin Cash network and protocol that can facilitate the capacity for that currency to exist, for the currency to be in physical actuality, even in digital form, but without the necessity of some sort of printing press. So the efficiency of it and the security of it and the utility of it, so all of this can be hosted on Bitcoin Cash. And so, and not just for Allodium, for a multitude of different currency solutions, and even on its own, it is its own currency solution, but it also has the potential to be a money that backs other currency solutions. This is getting way too deep for 80% of the audience. And so we'll circle back on Allodium being a representation of a political solution to the oppression of the centralized empirical state. One example among potentially many of how to liberate oneself, one's property, and the land of the earth from that empire. Now I'll say something that will put myself in risk. Not risk, but will target the empire upon myself, as Han Solo did, for he saw a higher purpose. So there's only one example in the history of the United States where territory of the United States, the federal government, has been lost to date. So the Civil War was initiated because the federal government lost territory. So the states that no longer saw themselves in union with the federal government decided to withdraw from that federal government. But the federal government, just like the Empire in Star Wars, was more willing to annihilate entire peoples than it was willing to allow there to be free states, to allow anything out of its grasp. So the federal government initiated the most deadly warfare in American history. The worst president of all of American history, Abraham Lincoln, waged war upon his own people and destroyed 2% of the entire population, with the first example of total warfare that the European type people had witnessed. I mean, they had basically done that warfare already against the Native Americans, waging war and just exterminating, genociding the civilian population, and seeing the entire Europe wanted to have this idea that they have these that they have this virtue and this nobility and honor, where the war is fought amongst the people of the state who are the soldiers, who have basically contracted their life to the state to fight to the death. So there was never really a target upon the civilian population. And so the United States set the bar for total warfare and the extermination of entire populations. That hadn't really been seen in Europe. It might not have been foreign in other examples of Asia, like the Khanate did to the Persians at one time, and there's different examples of people being the Israelis annihilating the people of Jericho, the Canaanites, as they invaded and waged total war to claim land and annihilate the natives. So this ideology of superiority and the lack of any humanity, the lack of any value to other peoples, this is the ideology that is known as Zionism. It has nothing to do with the Jewish religion. It's a political ideology of absolute dominance. So the United States has been a Zionist entity throughout its history in the way which it has exterminated and genocided the native people, in the way that some of the colonies enslaved people, in the way that it was basically a continuation of the Zionist entity of Great Britain that did the same things throughout the world, and just as the Vatican Church did the same Zionist mentality, just as the Empire and Star Wars will destroy entire planets because they have zero value if they're not dominated. And if they refuse to be dominated, then they might as well be exterminated, as a lesson to any others who might try to rebel from such domination. So there are no examples in the history of the federal government of losing territory. The only thing you can point to is the Civil War. And in the end, they waged absolute warfare and exterminated vast populations in order to dominate and subjugate the states that believed that they could be independent. It's the most savage and brutal war in American history, and the Zionist entity now celebrates Abraham Lincoln and enshrines his face on a mountain, a sacred mountain of the native people who they previously exterminated, to celebrate the champions of Zionism. But that statement is not true, for the United States federal government has lost territory, and the territory which it has lost is the territory of Allodium, which exists outside of its jurisdiction and has for 7 years. And by all historical precedent, there's only one outcome that will result from that, which is the extermination of the people of Allodium and the reintegration of the territory. So why is it, do you think, that Han Solo would put himself in a position of opposing the Empire, one man and his companion and their ship? No one could catch them. They were free and independent and had a way of life that was suitable to that freedom, that rebellious, vagabond nature that was incapable of being oppressed. Where is the decision point where he chooses? I don't know for sure, but as far as I understand, the decision point is, oh boy, it's like I'm in Mandela, the Mandela thing. What's that called? Where it's like realities are, it's like clashing and coexisting. So did Luke destroy the first Death Star? Isn't he in the X-Wing, and doesn't he shoot the torpedo that destroys the Death Star? I think he is. So that kind of discounts what I had said. It's as if realities are collapsing in real time. So Han Solo decides to return when the rebels are attacking the Death Star, and all of Luke's wingmen have been killed, and he's by himself in the trenches, making his way to the weak point of the Death Star in order to destroy it. And Darth Vader's on his tail, and Darth Vader's about to destroy him and enter into the scene Han Solo and Chewbacca and the Millennium Falcon, who then provide Luke cover and shoot Darth Vader down, or enough so that he has to disengage from Luke. And so Luke faced certain death in his attempt to bring down the Empire, try as he might. Yet Han Solo circles back to, and not just circles back, they thought he was gone, because no one understands the motivations of Han Solo. So why does he circle back? We can make our own suppositions. I'll try not to waste your time in processing my own answer. But circle back he does. And Luke is able to destroy the Zionist entity world destroyer. Thanks to his support of Han, who becomes his wingman in his greatest time of need. That's the first movie. And so somehow, because this is all symbolic, I mean, I'm not like, my religion's not based off of my ideology, my understanding of the world isn't based off of Star Wars. I'm using this as symbological language in order to convey a truth that I can't even get to in this method, but I can inference upon it. I can draw parallels. So what's Han's reward for circling back? If he had not circled back, he would not, the Death Star would not have been destroyed, the first one. Luke would have gotten probably shot down and killed, or imprisoned and turned to the dark side. As was his nature, as was the nature of his father, and was demonstrated in his all of his proclivities. Yet he was not alone, and for that reason, he succeeds. But what is the reward for Han Solo for his selfless choice to circle back? He becomes the enemy of the Empire. He gets on their radar as one who has capabilities beyond the Empire's capacity for domination. And there's many different things that I'm not connecting all of these dots here, but it's not necessarily true. The accuracy relative to the story is less important than the value of the parallels to facilitate the communication. So I can't point to exactly how or why Han's motivations are what they are. At times he seems motivated by profit. At times he seems motivated by a princess, a beautiful princess. At times he seems motivated by loyalty to his friends. But ultimately, he's the protagonist of the story. It seems like it's Luke, it might seem like it's Leia, but all of them are simple characters, and they're understood. Their motivations are understood the entire time. There's no complexity. All of the complexity lies within Han Solo, and why this individual and his companionship. Why companionship? The companionship that transforms the fast to the far, the individual capacity to realize the solution and then circle back, and then with others, with companions, forming a collective ship, a companionship of people who are then able to overthrow the ultimate oppressive force. So, I guess that's the end of this. And I'm not going to put a bow tie on it. I'm not going to wrap it up. I'm just going to leave it there for food for thought. And we'll see if there's any companionship that is fostered as a result. That's all for now. And I will now make the first Allodium video, in which I will include a link from this channel to the other channel so that you can follow both if you would like.